So, welcome to Chapter 2, The Things We Tell Ourselves. Now, before we get into what we tell ourselves, let's talk about what we protect. Since the name of the book is, Are We Protecting Our Greatest Asset? Right here, see it? What are we protecting our greatest asset? What are we already protecting? Well, I think we would all agree we protect our homes, we protect our cars, we protect our things. Why do we protect that with really no second thought, but we don't protect our greatest asset? Well, because we know by just years of experience and hand down from knowledge from our parents that that's what you protect. Your home, my God, we don't want to see that burn down. So if it did, we want to be able to replace it. We don't want to wreck our automobile, but if it happens, then we want to be able to replace it. So we protect these things. And even though I know that sometimes the cost of protecting these things is not what we'd like to pay, we still pay it because it gives us peace of mind. So now we push on to protecting our greatest asset. What is our greatest asset? It's ourselves. But somehow there's a transition from protecting our things to protecting ourselves. And that really comes down to three approaches. These are the things that we tell ourselves. So the first thing that we tend to tell ourselves is stories. Why do we tell ourselves stories? Well, stories are kind of based in some reality, but the problem or the challenge of a story is that it's based in the best case scenario turnout. It's kind of a facade. It's a misconception. It's a misrepresentation of what life would really hand us. But that's why we tell ourselves stories, because if we listen to our stories, we fall in love with them, we believe them, but how does that relate to what we just learned about the 3 steps to empowerment? Is there a why and a purpose there? Well, maybe. But there is no research because we think everything's going to be okay. And because we think everything's going to be okay, because we have a belief in this story, we take no action. We just allow the story to unfold. But you know what happens? Life happens. Life happens in ways that we sometimes are not prepared for, and sometimes the story is not prepared for as well. So the first approach, you got to ask yourself, is believing in a story empowering or not? Let's take the second approach, excuses. Now, excuses is just lack of effort. It really is. It's, when we go through the 3 steps again, there really is no why or purpose other than we don't want to do the work. And as far as research, well, if we did the research, we wouldn't have excuses because we'd know different paths to take. So there is no research. And we definitely don't take any action with an excuse because we've told ourselves that we don't really need to worry about this for whatever reason because of lack of effort. So what's the last approach? The last approach is a plan. Now think about it. Now I'm going to read through the book right here on that, the definition of a plan. A design for making, doing, or arranging something to have in mind as a project or purpose. So if we think through the definition of a plan, and we think about the 3 steps to empowerment, it incorporates every single step. The purpose, the why, the research, the time involved to find out what options are available to me because I have a why, I have a purpose to do this. And then when we get that path, that option that makes sense to us, we take action. We put that plan in place. So there's the 3 approaches that we constantly are telling ourselves, and it comes down to is 1, 2, or 3 empowering or not empowering? Well, I think we already decided that maybe 1 or 2, maybe not a whole lot of empowerment going on there. But number 3, the plan, without a doubt, that's the empowerment that puts us in a place to protect against life happens events, whether they happen or not. So why do we not do this? It seems pretty simple, doesn't it? Well, there's a certain fear about any kind of consideration of this happening. I mean, think about it. If our home burns down, we can rebuild it. If we have an accident with our car, we can generally repair it. hopefully no injuries within that accident. But when we talk about unexpected death, when we talk about disability, when we talk about the need for care, these are things that give us fear. Now, think about fear. Fear gains its power by us constantly thinking about these things and how we don't want to see that in our lives. Now, does that prevent that from happening? No, it doesn't. But if we put our heads in the sand and go in denial about this is never going to happen to me because I've got a fear of it, so I don't want to think about it, does that prevent it from happening, as I just said? No, it doesn't. But having a plan in place doesn't mean that it's going to happen. Now, obviously, we're all going to pass away someday. That's something we can't deny. That was one of the things we talked about earlier in other chapters. Aging and death are certainties of life. But how prepared are we for it? Because we never know when those would come. And remember, the greatest effect of these life happens events is not really to us, it's to our loved ones. They're going to suffer the greatest consequence of these things happening. So, fear creates procrastination. The more power we give the fear, the longer the procrastination, and nothing gets done. And then we buy into the stories and the excuses, which become disempowering and really don't help us in the long run if a life event happens to challenge our situation. So, in this section, I'm hoping that you get some sense of, am I telling myself a story? Am I making an excuse? Or should I be looking at a plan? And when it comes to men and women, you know, there's a different philosophy that goes on there too, because we as men, when we love our families, we have just a mandate in our DNA to protect and provide. But sometimes that becomes a little askewed, if you will, because we interpret that if we have to protect and provide, we don't want to think about risk. And so therefore, it's never going to happen to me, so I didn't need to plan because I've just solved the problem. Now, would you say that's a story or a plan? It's obviously not a plan because I didn't plan. I told myself a story. It's never going to happen. So therefore, I'm done. Solve the problem. Not really. But I understand the mandate of protect and provide. Believe me, I have the same love for my family. But let's keep in mind that if we do take the time to understand the empowerment of a plan, that plan carries on the protect and provide mandate when we can't physically or mentally. So that really is just an enhancement of what our mandate is. Now, women, when you ask a question of, do you think these things can happen from a life happens event, it's, I hope it doesn't happen. They understand that's a possibility. It's not just the straight, it's not going to happen. I hope it's not going to happen. And I'm not defining men and women to the point where you can't switch these situations between the two genders. But women tend to look at the bigger picture. And they're a little more open, actually sometimes a lot more open to discussing putting a plan in action than relying on a story or making an excuse. So I want to leave you with just looking at what you're telling yourself. Are you listening to yourself as you're telling these stories, excuses, or are you truly taking the opportunity to express your purpose, your why, to do the research, and to take action on a plan to protect yourself, your income, and your family? Thanks.